Yemen's Houthis have claimed a second attack on U.S. aircraft carrier USS Harry S. Truman and its warships with ballistic missiles and drones in response to continued American airstrikes. Now, in a televised address, the group's military spokesperson, Yahya Sarria, warned that it would continue attacks on Israeli ships in the Red Sea if Israel continued to blockade into Gaza.
The armed forces, with the help of God Almighty, carried out a qualitative military operation targeting the American aircraft carrier USS Harry Truman and its accompanying warships in the northern Red Sea, using 18 ballistic and cruise missiles and drones in a joint operation carried out by the Missile Force, Drone Air Force, and the Naval Forces.
And in a televised address, Houthi leader Abdul Malik al-Houthi warned that the group would continue to target American warships, aircraft carriers and naval assets in the Red Sea.
The Yemeni armed forces will not hesitate to target all American warships in the Red Sea and in the Arabian Sea in retaliation to the aggression against our country.
Meanwhile, U.S. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz has said that the American airstrikes targeted multiple Houthi leaders and took them out. In an interview to ABC, Waltz said that the current strikes were different than those carried out under the Biden administration.
The difference is these were not kind of pinprick, back and forth, what ultimately proved to be feckless attacks. This was an overwhelming response that actually targeted multiple Houthi leaders and took them out. And the difference here is, one, going after the Houthi leadership, and two, holding Iran responsible.
Meanwhile, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has said that the U.S. strikes would stop once the Houthis stop attacking American ships. In an interview to Fox News, Hegseth said, and I quote, "The minute the Houthis say we'll stop shooting at your ships, we'll stop shooting at your drones. This campaign will end, but until then, it will be unrelenting." Well, the U.S. has vowed to keep hitting Houthis until shipping attacks stop. In a video released by the U.S. Central Command, fighter jets were shown taking off from an unidentified location. In a telephone call with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov urged that U.S. to halt strikes in Yemen and instead engage in political dialogue to find a solution. The American airstrikes have killed at least 53 people so far. The attacks have raised chances of retaliatory strikes by the Houthis. The U.S. has several military bases in the region, from the Al-Tanf base in Syria, the U.S. Fifth Fleet in Bahrain, to the Al-Udeid and Al-Dhafra air base in Qatar and the UAE are among those which could witness potential retaliation. And we are joined by Professor Charles David Freilich, who is the former Deputy of National Security Advisor in Israel and a Senior Fellow at INSS in Tel Aviv and Professor at Tel Aviv University. He joins us from Tel Aviv. Thank you so much, Professor Freilich, for joining us on this broadcast today.
My pleasure.
Well, before we get into the nitty-gritties of this matter, let me start by asking that given the US's commitment to continue targeting Houthis until the attacks on the shipping cease, how do you foresee this approach playing out? Do you think it will compel the rebels to comply, or might it provoke intensified retaliatory strikes from the Houthis?
Well, I don't think it's over. The Houthis are, I think, somewhat overconfident and maybe excited about what they perceive to be achievements that they've achieved in the last year, disrupting international shipping, firing missiles at Israel, of course, in addition to firing at the U.S. fleet. I imagine there will be another Houthi response, but I think they're playing with fire because the U.S. seems to be determined here. And if that's the case, then I don't think there's any doubt what the outcome is, even if the Houthis can cause pain, not just for U.S. forces, but American allies in the region.
Right. And Professor, do you think that the Trump administration's aggressive stance also serves as a warning to Iran to end its support for the Houthis and in turn potentially weaken their backing for Palestinians in the Israel-Hamas conflict?
Well, the U.S. is saying explicitly that this is a warning to the Iranians, and even had the U.S. not said so, I think we'd have been correct to understand it to be an implicit warning. The Trump administration has said quite clearly that it would greatly prefer a diplomatic outcome to the overall rivalry with Iran, primarily on the nuclear issue, but that they might be willing to consider other options should diplomacy fail. And this would certainly be a warning, an indication to the Iranians that it might really be to their advantage to reach a diplomatic agreement.
Right, Professor, and thank you so much for joining us on this broadcast and sharing your perspective with us.
Thank you.